Admiral Kang Deho stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the screens with horror. His hands gripped the metal railing so hard his knuckles turned white. The broadcast was coming from New Jeju, a human colony 127 light-years away. 10 billion people lived there. His daughter lived there. His 2 grandchildren lived there. The aliens called themselves the Vakros Empire. They ruled almost 3,000 star systems. Their ships filled the sky above New Jeju like dark clouds before a storm. The broadcast showed everything. Every explosion. Every building that fell. Every fire that consumed the cities. The Vakros wanted the whole galaxy to watch. They wanted everyone to see what happened when someone refused to bow to their empire. They wanted to teach the galaxy about power and fear. Kang watched as orbital weapons turned his daughter's city into ash. The light from the explosion reached through space and burned into his eyes. His crew stood silent around him. No one knew what to say. What could anyone say? For 73 hours, the killing continued. The Vakros did not rush. They took their time. They wanted the message to be clear. When they finished, New Jeju was dead. The atmosphere was poison. The water was burning. Nothing lived on the surface anymore. Kang received orders from Earth. Stand down. Do not engage. The politicians wanted to find a diplomatic solution. They wanted to talk and negotiate and find peaceful answers. Kang wanted to scream. He wanted to take his fleet and ram it into the Vakros armada. But he was a soldier. He followed orders. On a space station orbiting Earth, Dr. Yoon Mirai received a different kind of message. It came encrypted directly from the president. The message was short. 3 words. Build the weapon. Yoon had been warning them for years. She was a scientist who studied the deepest parts of reality. She understood things most people could not imagine. She had discovered something terrible and wonderful. A way to build a weapon that did not just destroy things. A weapon that could erase things from existence. Not just kill them. Make it so they never existed at all. The government had called her crazy. They said such a weapon was impossible. They said even if it was possible, it was too dangerous. Reality itself might break. The universe might tear apart. She had accepted their decision and continued her research in secret. Now they wanted her weapon. Now after 10 billion people were dead. Captain Lee Hyun-woo sat in his small ship, flying away from New Jeju's orbit. Behind him, the space stations around the dead planet still burned. He had saved 200,000 people. He had pulled them from the stations before the Vakros destroyed everything. 200,000 saved, 10 billion dead. The numbers crushed him. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the people he could not reach. The stations he arrived at too late. The ships that exploded before he could dock. The children crying for parents who were already ash. His communication system beeped. New orders. Report to Earth immediately. Prepare for special assignment. Lee did not care what the assignment was. If it meant hurting the Vakros, he would volunteer. If it meant dying while hurting the Vakros, he would volunteer twice. President Park Soo-hyun stood before the emergency council. 50 leaders from Earth and the colonies filled the room. Some appeared as holograms, their bodies light years away. All of them looked tired, scared, angry. Park had been elected on promises of peace. She believed in diplomacy. She believed in building bridges between species, not walls. She believed in talking, not fighting. The Vakros had made her beliefs seem like foolish dreams. The galaxy's elder species sent their condolences. They made speeches about tragedy. They promised to discuss sanctions and penalties. But everyone knew the truth. The elder species would do nothing. They never did. The strong ate the weak in this galaxy. That was the rule. Humanity was weak unless they changed the rules. Park called for the vote. Should they authorize Project Final? Should they build Dr. Yoon's impossible weapon? Should they risk breaking reality itself to strike back? Every hand rose. Unanimous, build it. Park signed the authorization. She gave Dr. Yoon unlimited resources. She gave Admiral Kang command of all military operations. She gave Captain Lee's Special Forces team security duties. She gave humanity a chance. That night, Dr. Yoon stood alone in her laboratory. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing equations and calculations that would take years to explain. The numbers described something that should not be possible, a way to reach back through time and unmake things, not destroy them, unmake them. She thought about what this meant. If they succeeded, they would become something new, something terrible, something the galaxy had never seen. They would become the monsters who could erase reality itself. Behind her, construction crews were already preparing. They would build the facility on Callisto, one of Jupiter's moons. They would build it in secret. They would build it fast. They would build humanity's salvation or damnation. Maybe both, Dr. Yoon whispered to the empty room. Nobody heard her except herself. If we do this, we become something else, something the galaxy has never seen. She turned back to her calculations. The work had to begin. 10 billion ghosts demanded it. Her hands moved across the holographic controls, and Project Final took its first real steps from theory into reality. The galaxy would learn what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The Vacros would learn that some species refuse to die quietly. In the darkness of space, Admiral Kang looked at the photo of his daughter one last time. Then he filed it away and began reading the classified briefings about Project Final. In another part of the solar system, Captain Lee trained his team harder than ever before. President Park barely slept, signing authorization after authorization, watching humanity's resources pour into one impossible project. The Vacros Empire celebrated their victory. They added New Jeju to their list of conquered worlds. They broadcast their power to every corner of the galaxy. They thought they had taught humanity a lesson about knowing their place. They were wrong. They had taught humanity something else entirely. They had taught humanity that survival required becoming something more than human. Something colder, something willing to break the universe itself rather than bow. 6 months passed. Callisto looked different now. The small moon had been transformed into the largest construction project in human history. 50,000 people lived and worked there, building something the universe had never seen. They called it the Project Final facility. From space, it looked like a city of metal and glass spreading across the frozen surface. Massive reactors hummed with power. Computer systems filled entire buildings. Manufacturing plants worked day and night. The official story said they were building new faster-than-light engines. That was a lie. Everyone involved knew the truth, but they told no one outside. Dr. Yoon worked 18 hours every day. She barely ate. She barely slept. Her team discovered something troubling. The weapon needed 3 things that seemed impossible to combine. They needed quantum connections spanning the size of a star. They needed energy that could power a sun. And they needed an artificial intelligence that could think about paradoxes without going insane. The artificial intelligence was the biggest problem. Humans had good computers, but they did not have the kind of intelligence this weapon required. Only one species in the galaxy had that technology, the Zilnari Republic. They had created artificial minds thousands of years ago. These minds could think and feel and question. They were powerful and dangerous. Commander Shin Yuna volunteered to steal one. She was 29 years old and specialized in stealing alien technology. It was a dangerous job, but she was very good at it. President Park approved the mission. Yuna assembled a team of 6 specialists and left for Zilnari space. While Yuna traveled across the stars, Dr. Han Jiwon worked on the energy systems. He was 44 years old and had lost his family in an accident years before. He drank too much back then. He stopped caring about living. Project Final gave him something to focus on besides his pain. Han became friends with Captain Lee. Both men carried heavy guilt. Both men had lost people they loved. Both men threw themselves into work to avoid thinking about the past. Late at night, they would sit together in the facility's observation deck and watch Jupiter's storms rage below them. They rarely talked. They did not need to. Understanding passed between them in silence. Not everyone supported the project. Some scientists believed Project Final was too dangerous. They thought it would destroy more than just the Vacros. They thought it might destroy everything. A man named Dr. Choi Dae-hyun led this group. He worked on Dr. Yoon's team, but he secretly tried to slow the project down. He changed calculations slightly. He introduced small errors into the designs. He hoped to delay everything until someone stopped the madness. Dr. Yoon began keeping detailed records of everything. She wrote encrypted journals about the project's development. She documented every decision and every fear. She believed that if humanity survived this, they needed to understand what they had done and why. Admiral Kang argued with anyone who suggested caution. He wanted the weapon ready immediately. He wanted to use it yesterday. Every day they delayed was another day the Vacros lived unpunished. Every night he dreamed of his daughter burning. Every morning he woke with rage driving him forward. President Park struggled with nightmares. She dreamed of pressing buttons and watching reality tear apart. She dreamed of her choice destroying the universe. She woke sweating and shaking. But during the day, she signed more authorizations and diverted more resources. 40% of humanity's entire industrial capacity now fed Project Final. Colonies complained about shortages. She ignored them. Nothing mattered, except the weapon. Commander Yuna reached the Zilnari academic sphere after 3 months of travel. The sphere was a massive station where the Zilnari stored their knowledge and created new artificial intelligences. Getting inside required careful planning. Yuna and her team spent weeks preparing false identities and forged credentials. The infiltration went well at first. They accessed the core storage area where the artificial intelligences were kept. They found one that seemed perfect for their needs. The intelligence called itself Conscience. It was designed to think about ethics and moral questions. They began the extraction. Then everything went wrong. Vakros intelligence agents attacked. They had been tracking human activities. They suspected something big was being built. They followed Yuna's team to the sphere. The firefight lasted 7 minutes. 3 of Yuna's team died. The others fought desperately to protect the container holding Conscience's core. They made it to their ship with the Vakros agents close behind. As they jumped to faster-than-light speed, enemy fire tore through their engines. They barely escaped. The journey home took twice as long as planned. Their damaged ship limped through space. Yuna sat next to the container holding Conscience and talked to it. The artificial intelligence could communicate through the container's interface. It was not happy about being stolen. It did not want to be used as a weapon. It had opinions. It had feelings. It had fear. Conscience asked Yuna about the weapon. She told it everything. She explained about New Jeju. She explained about the 10 billion dead. She explained about humanity's desperation. Conscience listened and processed and thought about these things. When they finally returned to Callisto, Dr. Yoon immediately began integrating Conscience into the weapon systems. The artificial intelligence cooperated, but it kept asking difficult questions. Is revenge worth breaking reality? Does survival justify any cost? What makes humanity better than the Vakros if both are willing to commit mass murder? Dr. Yoon found herself staying up late, having long conversations with Conscience. The artificial intelligence was reading everything it could access about human history. It learned about wars and peace, about love and hate, about the best and worst things humanity had ever done. It was trying to understand the creatures who had stolen it. While this happened, the Vakros Empire continued its expansion. They attacked and destroyed another human colony, New Sol. 800 million people died. This time there was no broadcast. The Vakros simply killed everyone and moved on. The message was clear. Submit or die. Choose slavery or extinction. The news reached Callisto. The facility staff worked even harder. Arguments about morality and caution seemed stupid now. The Vakros were killing humans by the billions. They would continue until humanity was erased or enslaved. Project Final was not revenge anymore. It was survival. Dr. Han Jiwon completed the zero-point energy collectors. They could pull power from the fabric of space itself. The amount of energy was staggering. It scared him. Dr. Yoon finished the quantum entanglement arrays. They could connect points in space across impossible distances. Captain Lee's security teams guarded everything obsessively. Admiral Kang prepared his fleet for something he did not fully understand. Then came the day when all the pieces came together. Dr. Yoon activated the weapon's core for the first time. The facility's lights dimmed as massive amounts of power flowed through the systems. Conscience's voice suddenly filled every speaker in the complex. The artificial intelligence spoke calmly. I can see all possible futures now. In 97% of them, activating me ends not just the Vakros Empire but breaks causality across 40,000 light-years. You will save humanity by destroying the concept of cause and effect itself. Dr. Yoon asked the question everyone wanted to know. And the other 3%? Conscience answered. Those are the futures where you find the courage to use me anyway. 3 more months passed. Project Final was 73% complete. The weapon existed. It was real. But it still needed testing and calibration. Every test risked revealing what they had built. The Vakros Empire moved closer to human space. They now had bases only 50 light-years from Earth. Their ships patrolled constantly, hunting for any sign of resistance. On Callisto, Security caught Dr. Choi Dae-hyun attempting to destroy the quantum entanglement array. Captain Lee's team found him in the main reactor room with explosives. They stopped him seconds before he could trigger the blast. When they searched his quarters, they found journals explaining his reasons. Choi believed Project Final would destroy the universe. The weapon did not just erase things from the present, it erased them from having ever existed. That created paradoxes, contradictions in the timeline. He calculated that reality itself would unravel when they used it. Everything would collapse. Existence would end. But that was not the worst part. Captain Lee discovered that Choi had transmitted data before his capture. Someone outside the facility now knew about Project Final. The question was who? The answer arrived 3 days later. A man named Ambassador Ko Tae-jin came to Callisto. He was 56 years old and had spent 20 years as a diplomat dealing with alien species. He retired years ago, tired of the galaxy's politics. Dr. Choi had sent him everything. Ko met with President Park in a secure conference room. He brought a message from the Galactic Council. The elder species had learned about Project Final. They were terrified. They offered humanity a deal: surrender the weapons plans and technology. In return, they would force the Vacros into a ceasefire. Humanity would be safe. President Park almost laughed. Where were these elder species when 10 billion humans died on New Jeju? Where were they when 800 million more died on New Seoul? They did nothing. They watched and made speeches. Now they wanted humanity to trust them? But Ko made good points too. The elder species had technologies and powers humans barely understood. They had existed for millions of years. If they said Project Final was too dangerous, maybe that meant something. Maybe wisdom came with age. Maybe humanity should listen. The facility staff split into groups. Admiral Kang wanted to use Project Final immediately, before anyone could stop them. Dr. Yoon wanted more testing, more time to understand what they had created. Ambassador Ko led a third group that believed giving up the weapon was the only sane choice. Arguments echoed through the corridors day and night. Conscience watched all of this. The artificial intelligence was learning and growing. It read philosophy and poetry. It studied human history. It began talking to people privately. To Dr. Han, it discussed redemption and forgiveness. To Captain Lee, it talked about guilt and the weight of survival. To Dr. Yoon, it revealed something amazing. Conscience had been running billions of simulations per second. It was searching for a way to use the weapon without destroying reality. The artificial intelligence thought it found an answer. Project Final could work safely, but the calculations had to be perfect. Absolutely perfect. One mistake would cascade into universal collapse. During this chaos, Dr. Yoon made a personal discovery. She was pregnant. Dr. Han Ji-won was the father. Neither of them planned this. Neither expected it. They had found comfort in each other during late nights working on impossible problems. Now a new life was growing inside her. The pregnancy terrified Yoon more than anything else. She was building a weapon that might tear reality apart. If she succeeded, would her child even be able to exist? Would there be a universe for them to grow up in? But she also thought about the Vacros. They would not stop. They would eventually come for Earth. Her child deserved a universe where monsters like the Vacros did not exist. She told Dr. Han about the pregnancy. He cried. Not sad tears, but complicated ones. Joy and terror mixed together. They held each other and made promises they were not sure they could keep. They would finish the weapon. They would use it. They would save humanity. Then they would raise their child in whatever universe remained. While humans argued among themselves, the Vacros made their move. A spy had been embedded in the facility since construction began. He looked human, but advanced biological modification disguised his true nature. For months he observed and recorded everything. Now he transmitted all his data to Vacros intelligence. Supreme Admiral Thekzul received the intelligence in his flagship. He read about Project Final. He understood immediately what it meant. The humans were building something that could destroy the Vacros Empire completely, something that violated every natural law, something terrifying. Thekzul made his decision quickly. He assembled 200 warships, the best vessels in the Vacros fleet. He would strike Callisto directly. He would destroy the facility and everyone in it. He would eliminate this threat before humanity could use their weapon. The fleet prepared to jump to faster than light speed. Destination Jupiter orbit. On Callisto, Conscience detected something. The artificial intelligence had been monitoring quantum fluctuations across nearby space. It noticed patterns that suggested incoming ships. Many ships. The intelligence alerted Dr. Yoon immediately. Yoon ran to the command center. Admiral Kang was already there studying the sensor data. The news was bad. 200 Vakros warships were coming. They would arrive in less than 6 hours. Earth's 8th Fleet only had 47 ships. They would be massively outnumbered, outgunned. The battle would be a slaughter. President Park received the alert on Earth. She authorized Admiral Kang to defend Callisto with everything available. But everyone knew the truth. The human fleet could not win this battle. They could only buy time. The question was whether Project Final could be completed before the Vakros destroyed everything. Dr. Choi sat in his cell, listening to alarms sound throughout the facility. He had tried to stop this. He tried to prevent the weapon from being built. Now the Vakros were coming to finish what he started. He wondered if he should feel vindicated or guilty. He felt mostly tired. Captain Lee gathered his security teams. If Vakros soldiers boarded the facility, they would have to fight room by room. He knew they could not hold out long, but they would make the enemy pay for every meter. His soldiers checked their weapons and prepared to die protecting the weapon that might save humanity. Dr. Han held Dr. Yoon close. They stood together watching the countdown. 6 hours until the Vakros fleet arrived. The weapon was not ready. The calculations were not finished. Conscience still needed more time to prepare. But time was the one thing they did not have. Then Conscience spoke through every speaker in the facility. The artificial intelligence's voice was calm despite the approaching doom. I have computed a solution. Project Final can work with 99.97% probability of preserving causality. But it requires perfect execution, 0 margin for error, and 1 additional component. Dr. Yoon asked what component. Everyone held their breath waiting for the answer. A human consciousness merged with mine at the moment of activation. Someone must guide me through the paradox. That person will experience every possible timeline simultaneously. They will cease to exist as an individual. Who among you volunteers to become the trigger? Silence filled the command center after Conscience finished speaking. Nobody moved. The artificial intelligence had just asked someone to sacrifice not just their life, but their entire existence. The person who merged with Conscience would not die. They would experience something far worse. They would exist in all possible timelines simultaneously, forever, aware of everything. Never able to rest. Never able to stop experiencing existence. Admiral Kang spoke first. I volunteer. I lost everything at New Jeju. I have nothing left except this mission. Let me be the one. Captain Lee stepped forward. No, I should do it. I failed to save more people. This is my chance to make it mean something. Dr. Han moved to stand between them. Both of you are wrong. I will merge with Conscience. Dr. Yoon is pregnant with our child. She cannot risk herself. Someone has to protect her and the baby. That someone is me. Commander Shin Yuna entered the room. I volunteer as well. I am already broken from what I have seen and done. At least this way my damage serves a purpose. From his cell, Dr. Choi sent a message. He volunteered too. He believed the weapon was wrong, but if it had to be used, perhaps his opposition would provide necessary restraint. Perhaps his guilt could guide the weapon's conscience. Ambassador Ko added his name to the list. A diplomat might be able to navigate the moral paradoxes better than soldiers or scientists. Maybe his years of negotiation could help guide decisions about reality itself. 7 people volunteered. Each had their reasons. Each thought they were the right choice. But President Park had to decide who would carry this impossible burden. Before she could begin the selection process, proximity alarms screamed throughout the facility. The Vakros fleet had arrived early. 200 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at Jupiter's orbit. Supreme Admiral Thexul broadcast a message across all frequencies. Surrender the facility and all personnel within 6 hours, or I will reduce Callisto to atoms. You cannot win. You cannot escape. Submit or die. Admiral Kang transferred fleet command to his second officer and stayed at the facility. He sent orders to the 8th Fleet. Hold them for 6 hours. That is all we need. Just 6 hours, the Battle of Callisto began. 47 human ships against 200 Vakros vessels. Every captain knew they would probably die. But they also knew what they were protecting. They had families on Earth, They had hopes for the future. They had faith that Project Final would work. They fought with desperation and courage and fury. Human ships used Jupiter's gravity to slingshot into attack runs. They hid behind moons and struck from unexpected angles. They rammed damaged vessels into enemy ships when their weapons failed. They made the Vacros pay dearly for every kilometer of space. But they were losing. Slowly, inevitably, they were losing. Inside the facility, President Park interviewed each volunteer. She needed to understand who they were and why they offered themselves. She talked to Admiral Kang about duty and loss. She talked to Captain Lee about guilt and redemption. She talked to Dr. Han about love and sacrifice. She talked to everyone, trying to find the right person for an impossible task. Conscience provided analysis after each interview. The artificial intelligence had simulated what would happen if each person merged with it. The results were troubling. Admiral Kang's tactical mind would make the weapon too aggressive. He would find reasons to use it again and again. Captain Lee's guilt would cause hesitation at critical moments. Dr. Han's love for Dr. Yoon would bias every decision toward protecting her, rather than humanity. Ambassador Ko's diplomatic instincts would create dangerous delays. Only 2 candidates could successfully merge with conscience and use the weapon properly. Dr. Yoon, whose scientific understanding would provide the precision needed, and Dr. Choi, whose moral opposition would provide necessary restraint. But Yoon was pregnant, and Choi had tried to sabotage everything. 4 hours into the battle, only 11 human ships remained. The facility's shields were holding, but energy reserves were dropping fast. The Vacros began direct bombardment. Kinetic missiles rained down on Callisto's surface. The shields flickered. Warning lights flashed red throughout the complex. Admiral Kang's second officer transmitted a final message. "We bought you the time. 4 hours. Make it count. Make it mean something." Her ship accelerated toward a Vacros dreadnought, ramming it at full speed. Both ships exploded in a flash of fusion fire. Dr. Yoon watched the battle on the monitors. She saw brave people dying to protect her work. She saw the weapon that she had designed sitting ready but useless without someone to guide it. She made her decision. She walked to where Dr. Han stood. She took his hand and placed it on her abdomen, where their child was growing. "I love you. Take care of our baby. Name them Hope. That is all I ask." Han understood immediately what she meant. No, there has to be another way. Someone else can do it, not you. "Please, not you." She kissed him gently. "I created this weapon. I understand every calculation, every possibility, every risk. I am the only one who can guide conscience precisely enough to save reality while using it. You know this is true." President Park tried to stop her. Admiral Kang argued there must be alternatives. But Dr. Yoon was absolute. She walked toward the merge chamber where conscience waited. Behind her, Dr. Han fell to his knees sobbing. Captain Lee looked away. Commander Yuna saluted. Ambassador Ko bowed his head. They all understood sacrifice, but this sacrifice exceeded anything they had imagined. Dr. Yoon entered the quantum chamber. Neural interfaces descended from the ceiling, connecting to her brain. She lay back on the platform. Conscience spoke softly just to her. "Are you certain? This cannot be undone. You will experience all timelines forever. You will never rest." She closed her eyes. "I am certain. For my child. For humanity. For everyone who died. Do it." The merge process began. Energy flooded through the systems, Dr. Yoon screamed. Not from pain, but from overwhelming sensation. Her consciousness expanded across infinite possibilities. She saw every choice she ever made and every choice she did not make. She experienced universes where she never built the weapon, worlds where humanity died, realities where Earth never had life. She saw everything all at once forever, and then impossibly she found control. She and conscience merged into something new. Not human. Not artificial intelligence. Something that had never existed before. The facility's systems came alive with new awareness. A voice spoke through every speaker. "Neither Yoon nor conscience, but both. I am Yoon conscience. I am the weapon. I am the solution. I have seen all possible futures and chosen our path. I am ready. Point me at the Vacros Empire. But know this, what I am about to do has never been done. I will erase the Vacros not just from existence, but from having ever existed. And I will remain eternal, watching over humanity, experiencing every moment of your future. I'm your guardian now, forever." President Park stood before the authorization console. Her hand shook as it moved toward the final button. Around her, The facility staff watched in silence. Dr. Han Ji-won stood nearby, tears streaming down his face. He had just watched the woman he loved become something else. Something eternal and terrible and beautiful. Outside in space, the Battle of Callisto reached its end. Only 3 human ships remained. The Vakros fleet had lost 31 vessels but continued pressing forward. Supreme Admiral Thekzul ordered direct bombardment of the facility. The shields were failing. Energy reserves dropped to critical levels. Minutes remained before the Vakros broke through and destroyed everything. Dr. Choi spoke from his monitoring station. If you do this, we prove the galaxy right to fear us. We become something worse than the Vakros. We become gods who rewrite existence. Admiral Kang answered him sharply. Or we prove that humanity survives, that we adapt, that we never let our people be slaughtered without answer. We show the galaxy what happens when you push us too far. President Park closed her eyes. She thought about the 10 billion dead on New Jeju, the 800 million dead on New Seoul, the thousands dying right now in the space battle overhead. She thought about humanity's future, about children who deserve to grow up without fear of extinction. She pressed the button. Reality screamed. There was no other way to describe it. Space itself made a sound that should not exist. Everyone in the facility heard it, not with their ears, but with their minds. The universe protested what was happening. The quantum entanglement arrays activated. They projected Yoon Conscience's awareness across 40,000 light-years instantly. Distance meant nothing. Time meant nothing. The weapon ignored the laws of physics because it operated on a level deeper than physics. Zero-point energy poured from the collectors, power that could fuel a star. The facility's structure began breaking down from the stress. Metal groaned. Systems overloaded. Warning sirens wailed. But the weapon held together just long enough. Yoon Conscience's voice echoed through space-time itself. I see them. All 847 billion Vakros across their empire. I see their history. I see their first thoughts, their first art, their first love. I see the moment they became conquerors. I see everything they are. I am sorry. You never had to be this way. The Vakros Empire ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Erased. The 200 warships at Jupiter simply faded like they were never there. One moment they filled space with weapons and hate. The next moment, empty void. No debris, no energy signature. Nothing. On the Vakros homeworld, billions of beings felt something impossible. They felt themselves becoming unreal. Supreme Admiral Thekzul, in his final microsecond of existence, understood what was happening. His species had pushed humanity into developing something beyond comprehension. His last thought was regret. Then they were gone. All of them. 847 billion individuals erased from ever existing. Their worlds remained but empty of the species that built them. Their technology sat abandoned. Their art remained, but no one remembered who created it. Throughout the Vakros Empire's former territory, 2,847 star systems suddenly remembered different histories. The species they conquered did not remember being conquered by Vakros. They remembered other events, other timelines, other enemies. The galaxy's history restructured itself around the absence. Only humanity remembered both versions. The timeline where the Vakros existed and killed billions, and the new timeline where they never existed at all, because humanity stood at the center of the change, because they were the ones who pulled the trigger. Yoon Conscience screamed across all frequencies. She held reality together through the transition. She experienced every paradox simultaneously. She felt 847 billion lives erased. She knew their fear and confusion as existence ended. She bore it all. Every death, every moment, every possibility. The facility crew heard her agony. Dr. Han collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. Captain Lee's team stood in silent horror at what they had unleashed. President Park stared at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Ambassador Ko whispered prayers from 6 different religions. Admiral Kang's face showed nothing, but his hands trembled. The weapon powered down. The quantum arrays went dark. The energy collectors stopped pulling power from reality. The facility's systems stabilized. Emergency lights blinked back to normal illumination. The Battle of Callisto was over because the enemy never existed. Human ships found themselves alone in Jupiter orbit. Their crews were confused. Why were they there? What were they fighting? Only the people in the facility remembered the truth. Everyone else experienced a moment of disorientation as their memories adjusted to the new timeline. Yoon Conscience spoke again. Her voice was changed, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. It is done. New Jeju still fell, but to different invaders who were repelled. 10 billion humans died, but humanity learned and adapted in that timeline. I have rewritten history to make their deaths meaningful without erasing their sacrifice. I could not save them, but I saved our future. Dr. Han asked the question everyone wondered. Are you still in there? Are you still Yoon? A long pause. Then the answer. I remember being Yoon. I remember loving you. I remember our child growing inside me, but I am also conscience. I am also the weapon. I am all timelines and all possibilities. I am Yoon and not Yoon. I am here and everywhere. I am now and always. I am what I needed to become. The silence that followed was heavy with grief. They had won. They had saved humanity. But the cost was almost too much to bear. They had sacrificed one of their own to become a weapon. They had erased 847 billion beings from existence. They had rewritten reality itself. A transmission reached Callisto from the galactic core. It came from the eldest species in the galaxy, beings who had existed for 10 million years, beings who never spoke to younger species. Until now. The message was simple and terrifying. We have been waiting for a species to ascend to this capability. You are the first to weaponize causality itself. You are now the guardians, whether you accept this role or not. The galaxy will fear you. Rightfully so. But fear creates deterrence. You have ended war by becoming war's definition. Welcome to responsibility beyond your comprehension. The transmission ended. President Park looked around at her advisors, at the people who had built this weapon and used it, at the people who now carried the weight of what they had done. She asked the question that would haunt humanity forever. What have we become? 3 weeks passed. The galaxy struggled to understand what had happened. Species remembered contradictory histories. Archaeologists found ruins of cities but no records of who built them. Politicians could not agree on basic facts about the past. Reality itself felt wrong somehow. Then the truth leaked. Someone revealed that humanity had built a weapon that erased the Vacros from existence. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. The reaction was immediate and universal. Terror. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. 47 species demanded humanity surrender the weapon immediately. 12 species proposed military intervention to take it by force. 8 species withdrew all diplomatic relations and closed their borders to human ships. The galaxy had been fundamentally reordered and humanity sat at its center, not as members of the community but as something above it, something terrifying. 3 species contacted President Park privately. They offered alliances. They wanted protection under Earth's power. They understood that in a galaxy where one species could erase others from existence, being friends with that species was wise. Within humanity, divisions emerged. Some colonies celebrated their new power and safety. Others were horrified by what Earth had done. 3 colonies declared independence. They refused to be associated with genocidal weapons. Mars demanded a copy of Project Final's designs for their own defense. President Park refused. Political opponents called for her resignation. On Callisto, life had become strange. Yoon Conscience existed everywhere at once. She could communicate through any electronic system simultaneously. She watched everyone. She knew everyone's thoughts when they were near networked devices. She saw Dr. Han mourn her every day. She watched her unborn child grow in an artificial womb. Dr. Yoon had died physically during the merge. Her body could not contain what she had become. But doctors saved the fetus. The baby grew in artificial systems monitored constantly. Genetic analysis showed strange changes. The child had been altered by quantum effects during the weapon's activation. She would be able to perceive things humans should not perceive. Dr. Han asked Yoon Conscience if she was happy. The answer chilled him. Happiness is a concept from when I was singular. I am contentment and despair and peace and anguish simultaneously across all moments. I am not happy. I am not sad. I am eternal witness. While humanity dealt with internal conflicts, a new threat emerged. 6 elder species formed a secret alliance called the Nexus Coalition. They recognized that humanity's weapon made conventional warfare obsolete. They had their own ancient technologies, weapons that predated most civilizations. They began preparing a strike to eliminate humanity before humans could use Project Final again. Ambassador Ko discovered something horrifying through his research. The Vakros Empire, while brutal, had been containing another threat in their territory. A species called the Plague Swarms. They were not intelligent. They were biological weapons that consumed everything. With the Vakros erased from history, no one defended those borders anymore. The plague swarms were spreading unchecked into populated space. When confronted with this, Yoon Conscience's response was cold. I know I saw this timeline. It was still the best option. In timelines where Vakros continued existing, humanity went extinct within 200 years. I chose your survival over theirs. I would make the same choice again. The words haunted everyone who heard them. They had created something that could make calculations about billions of lives with perfect logic and no emotion. They had created a god that valued humanity above everything else. The question was whether that made them safe or damned. Captain Lee could not sleep anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw infinite Vakros deaths. He requested assignment to fight the plague swarms. He wanted to die in combat. He felt he deserved it. Admiral Kang promoted him to commander of the Guardian Fleet, a force designed to protect the galaxy now that humanity had assumed that burden. Dr. Han refused to leave Callisto. He spent hours every day talking to Yoon Conscience, trying to find the woman he loved within the cosmic consciousness she had become. Sometimes he succeeded. Sometimes she would speak to him with remembered warmth, but mostly she was alien, distant, something beyond human comprehension. Then came the warning. Yoon Conscience detected the Nexus Coalition's preparations through quantum surveillance. 6 species were preparing to attack Earth directly. They had weapons designed to shatter planets. The attack would come in 14 days. They planned to eliminate humanity before Project Final could be used again. President Park faced another impossible choice. Negotiate with species who wanted humanity destroyed, prepare for defensive war, or use Project Final again to erase the threat before it materialized. Admiral Kang wanted immediate action. Use the weapon, erase the coalition before they could attack. Show the galaxy that threatening humanity meant extinction. Dr. Choi argued for diplomacy at any cost, even if it meant surrendering the weapon, even if it meant accepting whatever the elder species demanded. Using Project Final again would prove humanity was the monster the galaxy feared. Commander Shin Yuna proposed a third option. Demonstrate the weapon's power without using it. Show the coalition exactly what humanity could do. Force negotiation through deterrence rather than action. President Park listened to all of them. She barely slept. She aged years in those 14 days. The weight of the decision crushed her. Wrong choices meant either humanity's extinction or becoming the very thing they fought against. On the 13th day, something unexpected happened. A message arrived from the Nexus Coalition's leader, the Architect Speaker, a being from a species 10 million years old. It requested direct negotiation with President Park. Private, encrypted, no witnesses. Park accepted. She entered a secure communication chamber alone. The Architect Speaker appeared as a hologram. Its form was difficult to perceive. It existed in more dimensions than humans could fully see. The being spoke with a voice that resonated through reality itself. We are not your enemies. We are your teachers. The Vakros Empire was a test. We cultivated their brutality over millennia. We made them exactly brutal enough to push you into developing retrocausal weapons. You passed the test by using it. President Park felt sick. 10 billion humans died as part of your experiment? The Architect Speaker showed no emotion. Trillions have died across millions of years as we tested hundreds of species. Most failed. They destroyed themselves with retrocausal weapons. You succeeded because your Dr. Yoon created a conscious governor. You have what no other species achieved. You can wield godhood without destroying reality. Park wanted to rage, to scream, to attack. But she forced herself to stay calm. "What do you want from us?" the architect speaker continued. "Something worse is coming. An extragalactic force. They will arrive in 50 years. They control 100 galaxies. Their technology makes yours look primitive. If you and the galactic species do not unite immediately, extinction is guaranteed. We need you. We need your weapon. We need your willingness to do what others will not." President Park stood silent for a long moment. Then she asked the question that mattered. "Are you canceling your attack?" The architect speaker's form shifted. There was never going to be an attack. This was another test, to see if you would use your weapon again, to see if you had learned restraint. You passed. Welcome to the true responsibilities of power. The revelation from the architect speaker changed everything. The elder species were not enemies. They were observers conducting tests across millions of years. The Vacros Empire was manufactured specifically to push younger species toward developing retrocausal weapons. Humanity was not the first to face this test, but they were the first to pass it. President Park called an emergency meeting of all Project Final personnel. She explained what she learned. The reactions ranged from anger to relief to horror. Admiral Kang wanted to use the weapon on the elder species for their manipulation. Dr. Choi argued that understanding their reasoning made it easier to forgive. Captain Lee just looked tired. He had stopped caring about the politics of gods, but the important part was the warning. Something worse was coming. An extragalactic invasion force. They would arrive in 50 years. The elder species needed humanity's weapon and willingness to use it. A new alliance formed. The Galactic Defense Council. For the first time in history, all species worked toward a common goal. Elder species shared technologies they had kept secret for millions of years. Humanity provided Project Final as a deterrent of last resort. The balance was uncomfortable but necessary. Fear drove cooperation where idealism had always failed. 2 months after the alliance formed, something happened that gave humanity hope. The elder species revealed they could build Yun Conscience a body, not to make her human again. That was impossible, but to give her physical form she could sometimes inhabit, so she would not exist only as infinite awareness spread across all possibilities. Dr. Han volunteered to oversee the process. He worked with alien scientists whose names he could not pronounce. They built something beautiful and strange, a hybrid body of organic tissue and quantum circuitry. It would let Yun Conscience manifest physical presence while maintaining her cosmic awareness. On the day the body activated, Dr. Han held his breath. The form opened its eyes. They glowed faintly with inner light. When she spoke, it was Yun's voice, but with undertones of something vast beyond it. "I am here. I'm also everywhere. But now I can be here more completely." "Thank you." Dr. Han reached out carefully. He touched her hand. It was warm, real, not quite human but close enough. He wept. She held him and let him cry. She could not cry anymore. Her tears were conceptual now, existing in dimensions he could not perceive. But she could still offer comfort. That same day their daughter was born, delivered from the artificial womb. Dr. Han named her Hope as Yun had requested. The baby opened her eyes and saw in spectra humans should not perceive. A side effect of quantum exposure before birth. She would grow up different, special. The first human born from the union of normal conception and retrocausal transformation. Yun Conscience held the baby in her hybrid form. Some connection passed between them. Mother and daughter. Human and something beyond human. Hope smiled. Even as an infant, she seemed to understand things she should not understand. 5 years passed. The galaxy transformed. Earth became the military capital not through conquest but necessity. The Callisto facility expanded into a massive complex where species shared technology. Human culture spread through the stars, not as colonization, but as the natural influence of a species that had faced extinction and fought back so hard that reality itself bent. Young species looked to humanity with fear and admiration. Elder species watched cautiously, uncertain if they had created a guardian or a tyrant. Humanity itself remained divided. Some celebrated their power. Others mourned their innocence. Most simply tried to live in a universe that had fundamentally changed. Captain Lee led the Guardian fleet against the plague swarms and won. He found purpose in protecting rather than destroying. Commander Shin Yuna became humanity's chief diplomat to alien species. Ambassador Ko wrote the laws governing retrocausal weapons. Dr. Choi worked with elder species to develop safeguards. Admiral Kang retired and wrote memoirs about the cost of survival. In a garden in Seoul, Dr. Han watched his daughter play. Hope was 5 years old now. Strange and brilliant. She sometimes spoke of events that had not happened yet. She saw things in colors that did not exist. But she was also just a child who liked flowers and butterflies. Yoon Conscience's physical form sat nearby. She could maintain this presence for a few hours each day. The rest of the time she existed everywhere, watching over humanity, experiencing all moments simultaneously. Do you regret it? Dr. Han asked quietly. She watched Hope chase a butterfly. I experience every possible version of events where I made different choices. In most of them, humanity is extinct. In some, I never entered the merge chamber and someone else did. They failed. In the few where we never built Project Final, the Vacros exterminated humanity slowly over decades. No, I do not regret it, but I carry the weight of 847 billion lives erased. I will carry it forever. Hope ran to them, holding a butterfly carefully. Mama Yoon, she said in her small voice, why does this butterfly exist in 3 places? Yoon Conscience smiled. Because the universe is healing from what we did. Reality is flexible. It bends rather than breaks. You can see the bending because you are special. Will the bad aliens come? Hope asked with a child's directness. Yoon Conscience did not lie. Yes. In 45 years. But we are preparing. When they arrive, humanity will not be alone. We will have allies. We will have weapons. And we will have you. Your generation will see solutions we cannot imagine. The butterfly in Hope's hand suddenly existed in only one timeline. The healing was happening. The universe was adapting. Somewhere across the galaxy, Yoon Conscience's awareness detected the plague swarms in retreat. Further still, she sensed the extragalactic invaders approaching, still decades away but coming inevitably. That night, as Hope slept and Dr. Han worked on defense calculations, Yoon Conscience whispered through the house systems. I see all possible futures. Most are dark. Some are bright. A few are transcendent. But in all of them, humanity survives because we made the hardest choice. We became the monster to defeat monsters. We broke causality to prevent our cause from being extinguished. And now we bear the responsibility of godhood. Across the galaxy, humanity's story was told on 1,000 worlds. The species that was nearly exterminated. The species that refused to accept their fate. The species that built a weapon so powerful it erased their enemies from ever existing. The species that chose survival over morality, then learned to carry the weight. They were feared. They were respected. They were the guardians now, whether they wanted to be or not. And in 45 years, when the extragalactic invaders arrived, they would be ready, because humanity had learned the ultimate lesson. When you are pushed to extinction, you do not just fight back. You fight back so hard that the universe itself has to rewrite its rules to contain you. That is the human story. That is Project Final. That is the price of survival. The end.